Better thinking, faster decisions, bigger ROI. This is the Finding 12 Minutes podcast. The idea is simple. If you can find 12 minutes of efficiency in your day, you will gain an hour every week, and that changes how we work. Each episode is focused on practical ways to use AI, technology, and smarter strategies to help you move faster, think clearer, and get more done with less effort. So let's find your 12 minutes. So I think the AI bill has finally arrived, and I think some people aren't interested in actually opening up the envelope just yet. So I think the original AI pitch really sounded simple. Replace repetitive work, increase efficiencies, reduce headcount, save time, right? Go back to the concept of finding 12 minutes. But now some companies are discovering something very uncomfortable, that the AI employees are also starting to send invoices. And these invoices are getting very expensive. And these invoices are coming in terms of token-based usage. So recently, Microsoft decided to end its access to Anthropic's Claude code for thousands of their internal engineers working across a variety of their products. The reason wasn't capability, it was cost. Heavy usage was reportedly becoming unsustainable, pushing Microsoft to direct their teams back towards utilizing lower cost alternatives. Same thing with Uber. Reportedly ran into the same issue after aggressive adoption of AI coding tools burned through its projected AI budget months. I think half a year early, full year's budget in 6 months. So I wanted to kind of hone in this episode that kind of builds off of two earlier themes. AI is still looking inconveniently human, and organizational risk is becoming, when you're becoming AI, before it's actually economically ready. So when you think about that for a second, organizations are wanting to become AI ready, but are they economically ready? And this shift is happening right now is really important. We're moving away from this concept of all you can eat AI and into what I call kind of token economics or token-based usage. This is going to change behavior. Suddenly, every prompt has a cost, every workflow has a cost, every recursive loop between humans and AI has a cost. The more complex the task, the larger the bill becomes. And ironically, many organizations have made staffing decisions before they fully understood the economics. It's kind of funny. The joke really wrote itself. We fired all of our developers because AI could do the work, only to discover that the AI licenses have become more expensive than the developers themselves. So do we switch back to humans versus AI? But underneath the humor is some real enterprise problem. AI absolutely creates efficiency. It absolutely helps teams move faster. It absolutely helps organizations find those 12 minutes. The mistake is assuming the efficiency was automatically profitable. Those are not the same thing. A developer using AI nonstop for code generation, debugging, testing, documentation, reasoning may become dramatically more productive. But if that productivity creates a $2,000 monthly AI bill per engineer, leadership now has a harder question to ask. How do we improve margins? And did we just move labor costs into infrastructure costs? This is where many companies are now. The market is really exposing another reality. The AI pricing models were never stable and they were never sustainable. Early adoption was subsidized. Just like in the early days of the mobile phones, everyone would get a free cell phone and you could basically just get discounted phones. Then iPhone came out and next thing you know, there's $1,000 iPhone. iPhone basically got rid of the subsidization. But at that point, they've already had scale and everybody had phones and they were basically addicted to them and they needed them. They were a necessity. So this early adoption was definitely subsidized, particularly when it comes to AI as well. So these flat rate plans created the illusion of unlimited scale, but enterprise usage patterns, especially for engineering and for complex reasoning workflows, are computationally expensive. Now the economics are tightening, which means organizations must become more intentional. Not every workflow deserves a premium AI model. Not every employee needs to have unrestricted access. Not every process benefits from maximum automation, and not every efficiency gain creates an ROI. So to me, this is the next phase in the maturity of AI adoption. The winners will not be companies that use the most AI. The winners will be the companies that understand where AI creates leverage, where humans still create judgment, and where the economics actually work. So if I spend this, what do I get? And I think what we've learned is that we spend this and we're not getting a lot. And the reality is that bringing this full circle, if we're spending $200,000 a month to replace one engineer, why aren't we just rehiring that engineer? So it is one of those things to where it has become very fascinating that the economics are basically going to be pushing us back to human coders and even humans in the loop. So the goal was supposed to be better business outcomes and the difference between experimentation and operational strategy. And honestly, this may be healthy for the market, what's happening now, right? Being able to pull this back and it's not throwing AI into everything. We're not going to get AI slop. We're not going to have just a flood of new applications and a flood of, just AI generated content. Unlimited AI usage encouraged sloppy implementation. Like I'm not paying for it. It's all there. I'm just going to create 1,000 cat videos. I'm going to create 500 white papers. I'm going to do all these things to where you're just creating slop and getting content put out there. Maybe this change, this pivot, so to speak, is going to get more organizations to think more strategically through their AI creation. So as organizations started adopting AI everywhere, simply because they could. And the same way that protein suddenly appeared in every snack food and every fast food and anyone that was selling any kind of food, AI started to appear in every product, every workflow, every pitch deck. Why? Because it was cheap. We were getting hooked on the drug. We were getting pulled in. It was readily available and we weren't being held accountable to our usage. Now the finance teams have stepped in. Finance teams have asked a very different set of questions to the innovation teams, right? It's not what can AI do, but it has come back to what does it cost? What does it cost to do what we're doing? You've seen these rumors and you've seen these articles to where companies have regretted firing everybody on their staff because they were trying to automate everything and they realized it wasn't getting the results that they want. But now are we not only getting the results that we don't want, we're also spending just a tremendous amount more to kind of get lesser quality work, which is very interesting. Other questions that you would find your finance team asking is what is the measurable return? And I think that's a very valid question. It's a very valid ask to sit there and say, if we spent X, what do I get? And I don't think there's a lot of organizations out there that have said, yes, I'm getting a measurable return on what we're spending. If I put $100,000 into something, am I getting 10x return? Am I generating $1 million in new revenue? Am I generating 5x return? A 1x return? A 2? Like we have no idea. But we do know that these AI bills are coming in and you see companies spending literally tens of thousands of dollars per month without any real measurable return. The other thing is you think about other questions like what workflows justify the spend? You can think about it from a marketer's perspective. Am I going to spend $100,000 to replace a $60,000 a year marketer, junior level marketer, $80,000 a year junior marketer? I don't know. I don't think that to me justifies the spend. Could you replace a high dollar developer with one of these tools? I guess you could, but what you're finding is that without any limits or without any guardrails, that resource, the new resource, the AI resource become immensely more expensive. The other thing you start thinking about, and another question that really comes up is, what happens when usage scales? So you have a $200,000 bill today, $100,000 bill, $10,000 bill today. If you increased it and your business started to scale, can you justify a twofold increase in that expense? At what point do you actually put limits on that? And so back in the day when all of this was free and you had unlimited usage, it didn't matter. We can scale at scale and it didn't matter. Like it doesn't matter if 80% of what we were putting through the AI was not used, it didn't matter. Now you put 80% through there, you're paying for something that doesn't provide any single return, any ounce of return. And so scaling just amplifies this problem. And one of the things that came up recently, and it was an interesting comment that someone said, or maybe I read it, and it was about the fact that AI, only thing it really does is just amplifies bad processes earlier and faster. You see things happen at scale and at speed, and all it's doing is just making the problem worse. So I think that all of this conversation changes entirely. And so when we think about finding that concept of finding 12 minutes and why it matters, that if it costs you 45 minutes worth of budget to do the work, that's really not efficiency. It's really kind of a misallocation. So I think when you kind of peel that back, and kind of reframe that a different way is like, but finding 12 minutes cost you 45 minutes of budget. That's not efficiency. And I think that misallocation of this really then kind of lines this up to the fact that these token-based usages is really going to kind of redefine how we think about business and development, business investment. So organizations that are going to survive this phase will be the ones that treat AI like any other business investment. It's measured, it's intentional, it's governed, it's economically justified. I think the days of us just experimenting and doing whatever we can with the AI is ending. I think that on the consumer side, you'll still have the unlimited usage type subscriptions. You'll have the ability to do those things, and that's great. But organizations and enterprises that use API and are using token-based usage are going to be at a disadvantage if they don't tighten up their processes, don't tighten up their concept of how AI is deployed and where it's deployed and how it is used. So because eventually every AI conversation is then going to become a finance conversation. And how do we move past that? So I think this problem's not going away anytime soon. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. But you're really going to have to think about this as from an organizational perspective and be very, very selective about, I can't do everything with AI, but if I had to think about one thing, if I had to think about the one process, the one application, the one thing that I want to invest my money in that I'm going to get the return in, that's where you're going to win. The days of being able to apply this to everything, I think, are quickly coming to an end, but it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. So that's our 12 minutes this week. Looking forward to chatting next week. If you have any comments or questions, just drop them in the comments on your favorite podcast platform. And that's your 12 minutes. If you found value in this, share it with someone who needs to work smarter, not harder. And remember, small efficiencies compound. Find 12 minutes a day and the results take care of themselves. I'll see you in the next episode.